India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the budget a while back with a special focus on the middle class and agriculture. We are here with Mr. Arvind Virmani, an Indian economist and full-time member of Niti Aayog, to hear his insights on the major announcements made. Thank you, Mr. Virmani, for joining us today. So, Mr. Virmani, one of the key announcements was a significant tax relief for middle-class earners with no income tax for those earning up to 12 lakh rupees. How do you see this as an effort to stimulate consumption, and what impact will it have on overall economic growth?
So, I would situate this within the broader tax reform. Being an economist who looks for reforms to stimulate growth, I think is very important, and this is something which has not been picked up by too many channels and too many people, is that there is a major income tax reform in the budget, but the finance minister said it will be presented in the next week. So I can understand nobody has actually seen it, but she has indicated that this will reduce the number of lines and chapters and so on by 50%. That's a huge reform. How do I say that? Because when I was my last month actually as Chief Economic Advisor in 2009, this was a draft which I approved as CA, which was one of the last meetings I had in finance. So it has taken a long time, but I think it's a major reform. And the reason is because there are so many contentious issues in in income tax and business tax particularly, which have to be addressed. So the interests of both the revenues and the business has to be satisfied. So we will see how important and significant that reform is once the bill is presented in Parliament. So within that context, I think there were two arguments which people have been making over the last year. I'm not talking about the arguments in the budget or before the budget, because I didn't know what is in the budget. The argument has been, should it be a revenue neutral reform, or should there also be a tax reduction? Clearly the second path has been taken, and I think the argument for that was that inflation has increased the nominal income of people, of the middle class particularly, and even though the real income has not increased that much, the tax has increased, the tax revenue collected from that. So that's a good economic argument for moving the tax brackets to keep the tax collection commensurate with the increase in income. So I think that is the reasoning. And given that reasoning, we would expect good positive impact on incentives. Now, more specifically to your question, what is the effect, likely effect on consumption? I think it's important to understand the background. The background is that we know from the survey which came out last year that poverty has been virtually eliminated. So you could say that of course there are pockets all over the country, but those cannot be addressed by general policy. You actually have to go to those pockets, see what the problem is, and address it pocket by pocket, where the role of states is much more important than the center. The union government tries to do whatever it can. If much of the poorer population is now lower middle class, we have to now start thinking of that. And I think that is what this income tax reduction will do. It will incentivize or give back, in a sense, the extra taxes to the lower and middle class, and that will definitely have a positive impact on consumption. Now, consumption was recovering. I had said this a year ago that rural consumption would recover after the El Nino. What was a bit of a surprise was the reduction in urban consumption, but overall consumption was reviving, but not enough to go back to pre-pandemic levels. So there will be a positive impact, and hopefully consumption ratio would go back to the levels which is the normal one from pre-pandemic. So the answer is yes, it will have a positive effect on consumption, and that will help put GDP back from the kind of pessimistic assumptions that people were making. There is one additional thing people are asking, why not any further stimulus in capital goods? And the reason is that because of various things which happened in the first 2 quarters of the year which we are in right now actually, the expenditure outlays had slowed down. So those will naturally recover now, both at the union level and the state level. So even though the numbers may not change, the amount which is translated into actual expenditure is going to change. So you will get both those things helping to get growth back on the track that we had envisioned. Not exactly, a bit lower because of all the global uncertainties, but back on track.